Senator, welcome back to the program here. You're calling on the Secretary of State to finally implement these stringent vetting procedures for all Afghan evacuees from back in 2021. These are procedures that the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security, they recommended these back in 2022 during the Biden administration. Have you heard back yet from Secretary Rubio?
Well, we haven't. There's a briefing here in just the next few minutes from the FBI. But what happened is there were some programs that were passed by Congress, but the particular shooter in Washington, D.C. and some of these others were admitted by the Biden administration using humanitarian parole, is what it's called. And they were not vetted at all. And unfortunately, with deadly consequences. So we're going back to make sure that we understand exactly what was done, what was not done, but to make sure that the vetting program, which we assume would be a part of any sort of admission of any foreign national, is fully implemented.
If the vetting program is implemented, how soon do you think it will happen? And what is it going to look like for these thousands of Afghan refugees in the United States?
Well, as you can imagine, it's not easy because this doesn't tell you what you don't know. In other words, you can match names against a database, but coming from a war-torn country like Afghanistan, it's very hard. But the fact of the matter is we have to do better, or we can't allow people to come into the country unvetted. Those are our two alternatives. And now for the ones who are already here, not through any program like the special immigrant visa program that Congress passed, but through this parole process, we can't allow people who are unvetted to come into the country because bad things will happen.
But for the people already here, what's this going to look like? Will they just receive phone calls, do you think, from these different agencies that are doing the extended vetting? Or is it going to be knocks on the door? Any idea?
Well, there needs to be in-person vetting and monitoring the ones that are allowed in the country. Apparently, the shooter in Washington, D.C. was deteriorating. There were a number of emails that have since been recovered showing that he didn't speak English, he was not assimilating, and he was becoming increasingly isolated and mentally ill. And we need a process that will identify these signs and vet people on the front end, but also monitor them so that they don't become a threat to themselves and others while they're here.
Senator, how tricky is this to avoid the rhetoric that might fuel suspicion and endanger those Afghan refugees who are here doing things by the book, but also root out any potential threats that never were vetted in the first place?
Well, of course, Jason, we were all sympathetic, or as I would say the vast majority of Americans and Texans certainly are sympathetic to people who helped the United States and our soldiers and our allies in Afghanistan, and who will be, if they had stayed in Afghanistan, would be murdered by the Taliban.
Yeah.
And so we tried to provide some access for those people who actually truly were partners with us, who helped save American lives. But we assumed that there would be a vetting process, which has now apparently been virtually non-existent. That's a danger to folks here at home, and that's our first responsibility.
Are you concerned at all, though, that there might be Afghan populations here in this state or across the country living in fear because of the rhetoric around the issue?
I don't have any way of gauging that. But again, I believe our first responsibility is the safety and security of Texans and all Americans.
Let me ask you about the boat strikes here, Senator. The Trump administration says there have been more than 80 people killed, at least 80 people killed in some 20 or so boat strikes. These are alleged drug boats that we've all watched over the past few weeks here. Many of these happen in international waters, and I'm curious about the use of force. Do you think the current use of force is enough to cover this, or does Congress need to step in and specifically authorize the Trump administration to do this?
I'd be happy to work with the administration to come up with an authorization for the use of military force. I've reached out to Secretary Rubio on that, but I don't sense that my Democratic colleagues are in any mood to do anything that they think will help President Trump. And it kind of boils down to that, unfortunately. But I think the president's operating within his constitutional authority. If we look back at the status quo before, We see tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of Americans dying from drugs coming from Latin American countries. And clearly, what we were doing then is not working. At least President Trump is stepping up and trying to fill that void. I do believe that this is having some deterrent effect. Although, as you know, this is all about the money, and as long as the cartels can make money, they don't care how many people they have to sacrifice in order to do so. But I do think it's helping, and I support what the president's what he's doing.
You know, the White House and the Pentagon say the boats were all tied to narco terrorists, groups out of Venezuela and Colombia. The public has yet to really see evidence of that. Have you seen anything, any evidence that would prove this? And why do you think the administration isn't releasing this?
Well, this isn't a court of law, as you know. I'm a recovering judge by profession and attorney general. I certainly have respect for the rule of law, but this is a lawless region and a problem that the law enforcement model has now not allowed us to solve. So I'm a member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I
Yeah.
do get to read classified briefings, but I have confidence, high confidence, that we know who it is we're targeting, and we are taking out bad people who will, if allowed to continue, will kill more Americans.
Are you concerned about the precedent this could set since it's happening in international waters? I mean, other countries could do the same thing, couldn't they?
I think the situation is desperate. We have to do something to save American lives who are being lost as a result of this poison that's being shipped into our country and from Mexico and the rest of Latin America. And so I believe this calls for extraordinary measures. This is an extraordinary measure, but I'm hopeful that will have some deterrent effect. I'm confident it will save some lives. But where this will lead us into the future, I can't say, because I think it's going to depend on the facts of the situation.
One more question here too. I want to talk to you about the rising cost of healthcare. We're just a few weeks away to the new year here, and Democrats want to extend those subsidies to health insurance companies to keep health insurance premiums down. Republicans want to give some of that money to the most needy and let them actually have the money to pay for these healthcare premiums. There's still a lot of folks who are concerned that nothing is going to get done before the end of the year, that they will see healthcare premiums rise. What do you tell those Texans who are watching this?
Well, first of all, I would say that, and you're right, those premiums under the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare or Unaffordable Care Act, are going to go up 18% next year. Obviously, the basis upon which Obamacare was sold were not true. They were lies. If you like your policy, you can keep your policy. If you like your doctor, and the president claimed it would bring down healthcare costs. None of that is true. Plus, now we know that 100% of these premiums go to insurance companies that continue to get wealthier and wealthier, and they skim 20% off the top that does not go to healthcare. And the Government Accounting Office came out just this last week with the documentation of extensive fraud in the system. So my hope would be that reasonable minds would work together to try to solve the problem in a bipartisan way. I don't know whether that's possible, but I do know that the votes that we will have on Thursday, or that we will not likely be able to get this done this week or before Christmas. But my hope is after none of the alternatives passes, then we will come together and try to negotiate a reasonable outcome.
If this can't get done before the end of the year here, I mean, what's to say it can get done in the first quarter or even in the beginning of January?
Yeah, well, the premium notices have gone out already. As you know, I
Sure.
think November the 1st was when they went out. We may not be able to do pass anything in time for them these new policies to kick into effect in January. But look, we can't sustain year after year 18% increases in insurance premiums for a Obamacare system that just flatly doesn't work and was sold under false pretenses. So we've got to do better. Whether or not we can work out something on a bipartisan basis remains to be seen, but I'm sure going to do my part to try.
Senator, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
You bet.